The moment May Holloway stepped onto the metal deck of the Vorthax Zenith, three things struck her at once: the scent of sterilized ozone, the chill in the recycled air, and the way the alien guard seemed to flinch when she smiled. "Why, thank you for the escort," she said warmly, though the plasma cuffs bit into her wrists. "It's not every day a girl gets such a personal invitation to the stars." The tallest of her escorts, a red-scaled creature with too many eyes, huffed through what might have been its nostrils. Another, more insectoid in shape, clacked its mandibles without comment. May tucked a loose strand of chestnut hair behind her ear. Her posture remained casual, her expression courteous, but her eyes swept the hallway with the precision of a field strategist. Glossy black floors, mirrored panels. No sharp edges. Sterile design. A ship not meant for comfort, but for control. They stopped before a sliding door that hissed open with ceremonial slowness. Inside, a pale chamber with a reclining restraint chair, pulsing blue walls, and several devices that looked either medical or medieval. She exhaled softly. Oh good. An interrogation spa. Zelvok stood inside waiting. Of all the creatures aboard, he was perhaps the most humanoid. If one overlooked the seafoam skin, four-fingered hands, and eyes like twin molten opals. Clad in a black uniform stitched with gold filaments, he exuded the unearned confidence of an academic who'd never lost a debate, mostly because no one dared argue. Subject 9A47. Designation, Earth Human Female, he said without preamble. You will sit. You will not resist. We will begin psychological calibration. May gave a polite nod. Of course. Shall I take my shoes off, or are you not a carpeted species? He blinked. Once. Twice. The kind of blink that suggested his species had evolved from something with gills. I detect humor, he said. Your species' primitive coping mechanism. May tilted her head. Well, that and pie. The guards shoved her into the chair. The restraints clicked into place, and she made a small sound of discomfort, more for show than necessity. The lights above shifted hue, casting her in deep lavender. Zelvok stepped forward, holding a long, crystalline instrument that pulsed faintly. This device measures fear response through neuroempathic readings, he explained. It cannot be deceived. May smiled again. And here I was hoping you'd just ask how I feel. Communication's such a lost art these days. The device touched her temple. A soft chime. Zelvok frowned. Adjusted a dial. Touched her again. Another chime. No spike. No tremor. You are calm, he said slowly. Am I? She looked around. Well, to be fair, this is my third abduction this year. You aliens really need to coordinate better. He paced. The door hissed shut behind the guards, leaving just the two of them. A quiet buzz hummed through the walls, some form of low-frequency scan. He observed her with the narrowed intensity of a hawk eyeing a snake it didn't recognize. Earth is classified as a Class 7 primitive world. Your people still employ combustion engines. Your highest weaponized technology involves shrapnel, fire, and radioactive decay. Your cultures are divided. Tribal. Inefficient. May pursed her lips. Gosh. You've really done your homework. Let me guess, you also think we don't know what's out there. Zelvok stared. You do not. Well, she said, flexing her fingers under the restraints. You're half right. He turned away, adjusting settings on a console. Charts, colors, alien symbols danced across a floating display. I find your lack of terror disconcerting. May leaned her head back. You ever met a kindergarten teacher with 6 sets of twins? This is practically a vacation. Zelvoka's hands paused mid-motion. Explain. It means, she said sweetly, you're not the scariest thing I've dealt with. Not by a long shot. He tapped a panel. A secondary screen projected data from her prior scans. Heart rate, brain activity, hormone levels. All infuriatingly stable. Impossible, he muttered. No human should be this unaffected. Maybe I'm not a human, she whispered theatrically. Zelvok turned. What? Kidding? She winked. For a moment, he simply watched her. Then, without a word, he pressed a button. The restraints hissed open. May stretched her arms with a soft groan. Shall I return to my cell, or do we try the hot tub next? Zelvok stepped back. You will be escorted. Further testing is required. You say that like it's a threat. Frankly, I'm looking forward to meeting your culinary team. Do you do gluten-free, or are your species past all that nonsense? He didn't answer. The guards re-entered and flanked her. She moved with them, graceful and unhurried. As they walked the curved corridor, May spoke lightly. You know, back on Earth, we had a saying, never corner something that's smiling at you. The guards didn't reply, but one visibly stiffened. Her cell was not what she'd expected. It had a cot, a basin, and an embedded view panel offering a rotating starfield. Not a luxury suite, but also not a dungeon. The door sealed with a soft clunk. Alone now, May turned slowly, eyes tracing the tiny surveillance in the corner. Hello, Peeping Tom, she said cheerfully. Hope you're taking notes. She crossed to the cot, sat, and pulled her legs up. From her boot, she slid a sliver of fabric, woven from carbon-imbued polymers, utterly undetectable unless you knew where to look. She began unraveling it into thread. Then, humming a lullaby, she braided it into her hair. Just a signal. For now. Several levels above, in the ship's observation core, a tri-species panel reviewed her data. She is undamaged, said the multi-eyed captain. She is manipulating us, growled a thick-chested warrior species. She is fascinating, Zelvok murmured. I request extended interaction. The others exchanged wary glances. Back in her cell, May gazed out at the stars. She began speaking aloud in English. Casual, measured. Let's see. Day 1. Captured by egotistical squid wizards. Day 2. Politely sabotaging their assumptions. Day 3. We'll see. She reached beneath the cot and withdrew a half-finished metal object she'd been assembling from stolen parts. A heat coil, a bent spoon, a power cell from the panel she'd accidentally shorted earlier. They really should have done a better background check, she said to no one in particular. She thought of Earth, of the debriefing room with its dim lights and old leather chairs. The mission was simple. Get caught. Stay charming. Learn everything. Easy, right? May laid down, laced her fingers behind her head, and stared up at the alien ceiling. Somewhere deep in the ship, Zelvok was watching. Rewinding the footage. Again. Trying to discern the mask behind the grin. He paused on a frame where she looked directly into the camera and winked. He shivered. Later that evening, though time was relative aboard the Vorthax Zenith, Zelvok returned to her cell. She was seated cross-legged on the floor, whittling something from a spoon. When he entered, she smiled like she'd been expecting him. I do hope you brought tea. I've been dying to compare leaf fermentation methods. Zelvok remained near the door. Your behavior continues to unsettle my colleagues. Oh dear. Should I try screaming instead? Might soothe their egos. He ignored the jibe. I've reviewed over 400 species across 7 sectors. Most respond to captivity with rage, despair, or bargaining. You respond with charm. Charm, she echoed. That's one word for it. Zelvoka's tone turned sharper. What is your purpose, human? She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she held up her spoon carving, a tiny model of the ship, detailed and precise. She balanced it on her palm. My purpose, she said, voice calm. To observe. To adapt. To survive. And what else? She looked him in the eye, that ever-present smile curving just a little higher. To remind you, she said softly, that not everything fragile is harmless. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other. Then Zelvok turned and left. May twirled the ship model between her fingers. She spoke to the silent surveillance again. I give it 3 days, she said cheerfully, before someone begs me to take command. The Vorthax Zenith was a ship built on arrogance. Its decks hummed with technology millennia beyond Earth's reach, its officers adorned themselves in titles longer than human names, and its command logs brimmed with reports of successful conquests, broken rebellions, and lesser species bent to compliance. It was, by design, incapable of humility, which is why it took them 4 full days to admit something was wrong with the Earthwoman. Zelvok stood at the observation deck, his tendrils tucked behind his back, watching footage of May Holloway's cell for the 15th time that shift. She was building again, an intricate sculpture using a food tray, 2 disposable utensils, and a strip of her own uniform's hem. He had seen her make a musical instrument yesterday. The day before that, she had somehow fashioned a percussive noisemaker from her pillow stuffing and shoelaces. "She is creative," said the first linguist, who had floated in uninvited. "She is dangerous," Zelvok replied, not looking away from the screen. "She makes jokes. She sings to herself. She calls the surveillance unit Tom. That is not danger. That is dissonance. She is compensating." "Is she?" Zelvok narrowed his eyes. "Then explain this." He gestured. The footage changed. May, seated in her cell, teaching 2 low-rank engineers how to play tic-tac-toe. They laughed. One even brought her a flavored nutrient cube. The surveillance logs showed it as a minor breach. The crew morale readings showed a spike. And no one could explain why she knew the engineers' full names. "She is not just amusing them," Zelvok said slowly. "She is infiltrating." The linguist blinked 3 lids in sequence. "It's a game." "What harm is a game?" "You're not looking closely," he murmured. On screen, she drew a square. 9 boxes. X and O. She let the engineer win. Let him believe he'd outwitted her. "That's how it begins," Zelvok muttered. May, meanwhile, was composing a haiku about space food in her head. She sat cross-legged on the cot, one hand absent-mindedly braiding her hair, the other holding a stylus she wasn't technically allowed to have. She smiled as her words took shape. Nutrient paste gray. Like unseasoned school lunches. Still better than dates. She chuckled to herself. The ship's food dispenser had offered her protein brick variant 7B again. She'd asked for ketchup. That alone had caused a meeting among culinary staff. They didn't understand condiments. That amused her to no end. "Tom," she said cheerily to the surveillance camera, "remind me to introduce your chefs to hot sauce. The galaxy may never recover." Her expression softened slightly. She looked toward the far corner of the room, where a faint shimmer marked the hidden panel she'd loosened 2 nights ago. Nothing fancy, just a slight warp in the reflective surface. No one had noticed. She'd tested the guard rotations, the maintenance patterns, even the scent changes in the recycled air. They were creatures of schedule. May was not. Elsewhere, a council met in hushed tones. Not the full Empire Council, just a regional command quorum. A half-dozen voices, all seasoned, all overconfident. "She exhibits no aggression," argued a general whose mandibles clicked in frustration. "She cannot even access weapons." "She doesn't need weapons," Zelvok countered. "She is using familiarity, humor, ritualized politeness. It's camouflage." A small, gelatinous being pulsed with bioluminescent uncertainty. "That's absurd. She is alone, isolated, powerless." "She is none of those things," Zelvok said. "You just don't see the teeth behind her smile." Back in her cell, May stood on her cot, arms outstretched, addressing an imaginary audience. "Ladies and gentlemen of the Imperial Tribunal," she announced in a grand stage whisper, "I come to you not as a warrior, but as a humble Earthwoman who simply wanted a decent cup of coffee." She bowed dramatically. The movement revealed a tiny shimmer of wire looped around her wrist, braided into a bracelet. No one had noticed that either. She sat back down and resumed carving a small chess piece, Queen, using the rigid corner of her nutrient brick. They hadn't asked about Earth's games, or what they taught. Later that cycle, one of the junior officers, Trilvan, thin-skinned and vaguely amphibious, was assigned to escort May to her third psychological evaluation. He entered her cell with an energy shield at the ready. May greeted him with a warm smile and an exasperated sigh. Another test? Tell your boss I'm running out of ways to appear fascinating. Trilvan didn't answer, just gestured for her to move. She walked beside him calmly, humming a melody he couldn't place. After a minute, she glanced sideways. You know, you'd be a hit back on Earth. You've got that whole brooding mystery vibe. He glanced at her, confused. What is brooding mystery vibe? It means you look like someone with tragic backstory and a soft heart under all the scowling. I am not scowling. This is my neutral face. She nodded solemnly. Oh, so you're just intimidating by default. I respect that. He looked away, but his neck frill darkened slightly. She'd learned what that meant. Embarrassment. In the chamber, Zelvok waited with new machinery. This one measured micro-expressions, vocal inflections, emotional displacement. It was designed to detect duplicity. May sat, smiled. Nice setup. You upgrade the lighting. Begin, Zelvok said. He asked her questions, dozens, about Earth, her past, her fears. She answered all of them with perfect clarity, her voice warm, her hands still, her body relaxed. Describe your species' survival strategy, he said at last. May tilted her head. Adaptation. Clarify. We get sick. We get up. We make mistakes. We learn. We lose. We laugh. We improvise. We grow. Then we get bored and start over. Zelvok narrowed his eyes. You make suffering sound romantic. May shrugged. It's not. But we never let it go to waste. Silence settled over the chamber. The machines flickered. The readings were odd. Not deceptive. Just unreadable. Back in his lab, Zelvok ran the data again. Cross-checked the inflections. The breathing. The micro-twitches. No anomalies. No deceit. And yet, his instincts screamed. He played the footage again. At one point, she scratched her temple. Just once. A casual gesture. He rewound. Paused. Enhanced. Her fingers had formed a pattern. 3 taps, 1 drag. Code. He didn't know the language, but it reeked of intent. May, meanwhile, had started teaching Trilvan idioms. Barking up the wrong tree, she said, doodling a tree on the wall of her cell with a smuggled stylus. It means you're blaming the wrong person. Why would one bark at a tree? Trilvan asked. It's a dog thing. Don't worry about it. What is a dog? Oh, sweet summer child. We really need to upgrade your Earth files. She saw the confusion, the flicker of curiosity, and pressed gently. We domesticated them. Took wild predators and turned them into best friends. Took wolves, gave them names. Fed them, loved them. And they protected us. Trilvan blinked. Why would a predator protect prey? Because we gave them something better than hunger. He looked unsettled. She liked that look. Later, Zelvok reviewed the latest crew metrics. Morale had risen 8%. Reports of disciplinary tension had dropped. And a surprising number of personnel had visited the Earth linguistics database without orders. The woman wasn't just a captive anymore. She was a cultural contagion. He activated a secure channel. The Emperor's voice, digitized and iron-hard, responded. What news, Director? She's changing the crew, Zelvok said. Subtly. Charmingly. Relentlessly. Terminate her. Zelvok hesitated. Sir, if I may, killing her could cause ripples. We don't yet know how Earth will respond. If they even know she's missing. They do. A beat of silence. Zelvok felt a chill not born of ship temperature. How? She allowed herself to be captured, the Emperor said. You've heard nothing of Earth's probes? Their deep signal arrays? They're encrypted transmissions. Zelvok swallowed. Then she's a plant. She's more than that, the Emperor said. She's a test. The line went dead. May sat in her cell, folding paper. Not Earth paper, obviously. Alien nutrient wrap, thin and flexible. She'd been teaching herself origami. Today it was a fox. A memory stirred, her training instructor's voice. You won't need a gun, May. You'll be the knife they never see coming. Smile, and watch them step into the trap. She placed the fox gently by the surveillance unit, then looked directly into the lens. Nighty-night, Tom. Zelvok barely slept. He reviewed logs, cross-examined officers, questioned crew. The deeper he looked, the more patterns emerged. Casual conversations altered. Jargon mixed with Earth slang. Humor infiltrating procedure. And always May. At the center. Quiet. Smiling. In the dining hall, she'd started a ritual of saying, "Cheers," before sipping her nutrient paste. Others followed. Then came jokes. Nicknames. Story exchanges. Culture, like mold, spreads in shadows. He stormed into the lab and demanded a full psychic analysis. One of the ship's teleempaths, a soft-bodied seer named Koth, attempted the reading. 3 seconds in, Koth shrieked and collapsed, shuddering. Zelvok knelt beside him. "What did you see?" Koth's voice shook. "Teeth. And fire. Wrapped in silk." May hummed, "Take Me Home, Country Roads," while assembling a makeshift mirror. She checked the reflection. Not bad, considering alien lighting. Her braid was tight. Her bracelet intact. The fox, perched like a totem, sat silent guard. Trilvan entered again. "Zelvok wants you confined without interaction," he said. She smiled. "Don't worry. I have plenty to do." He hesitated, then blurted, "Why aren't you afraid?" She met his eyes, tone soft. "Because you already lost." He staggered back. "We have your planet surrounded." She stood, stepped closer. "You surrounded our surface. That's adorable." He fled. Back in command, Zelvok watched the footage. Over and over. She was still smiling. Zelvok hadn't slept in 3 cycles. He no longer trusted the silence of his own ship. Once, the Vorthax Zenith had felt like an extension of his body. Precise, obedient, clinical. But now the air ducts whispered when no one passed. Doors hissed with delay. The lights flickered in ways that couldn't be explained by routine system checks. Something had shifted. The only constant was the Earthwoman and the sound of her laughter traveling down polished corridors. May Holloway had not escaped. She simply behaved as if she had. She no longer waited to be summoned. Instead, she began appearing, gently, inoffensively, in places she should not be. Engineering. The hydroponics bay. Even once, impossibly, on the auxiliary bridge sipping something that smelled vaguely of cinnamon. Every camera caught her smiling. Every officer who spoke to her ended the conversation laughing, unsettled, or quietly questioning their orders. She did not issue threats. She offered compliments, advice, games, cookies. No one could prove where she got the cookies. Zelvok had tripled her security. It didn't matter. She moved through the ship like fog, warm, invisible, and impossible to contain. She carried nothing, left nothing. But the effect lingered. Now, even the AI sounded hesitant when prompted to analyze her behavior. He'd asked the ship to compile a report on psychological vulnerabilities exposed by the human subject. It responded, "Do you want the truth or peace of mind?" He disabled it for sarcasm. May stood in the mess hall with a half-circle of low-ranking officers clustered around her. She was explaining office politics, with the tone of a patient kindergarten teacher. So, when the regional manager schedules a meeting at 4:59 on a Friday, that's not poor planning. It's psychological warfare. They stared at her. She added, "Friday is the last workday of our week. It's sacred. Interrupting it is the highest form of corporate treason. The insectoid ensign nodded solemnly and whispered to the amphibian next to him, "We must never invade on a Friday." May took a bite of her mysterious cookie. Exactly. Zelvok watched from behind a polarized shield, rage festering just beneath his cool expression. The officers weren't just listening, they were believing, integrating, smiling. He turned and marched to the core of the ship, straight into command. "Seal her," he barked. "Absolute containment. No contact. No food deliveries, no casual patrols, no more of this absurd cultural exchange pretense." The bridge crew hesitated. "Now," he snapped. They moved. 10 minutes later, May's new cell was sealed with 6-inch quantum alloy. No window. No visitors. Just a recycled air system and reinforced silence. May blinked slowly at the bare walls, then at the new camera nestled like a watchful eye in the ceiling corner. "No more playdates, huh?" she said cheerfully. She pulled out a paperclip. Where it came from, no one knew. She began twisting it methodically. 3 hours later, 2 engineers were called to recalibrate the environmental system. There was a temperature variance, small, but odd. When they opened the vent near her ceiling, they found nothing. When they returned to engineering, their systems were missing 12 lines of code. Back in command, Zelvok received a message. Text only. Unauthorized. "You forgot to say please." He stared at the words, his breath stilling. He traced the signal's source. The ship's water filtration report. A fake document. Buried in the subroutine. Accessed by a user logged as housekeeping. He activated full ship-wide lockdown. It did nothing. May watched the alarm lights flicker from her cell wall reflection. Then she whispered, "They're starting to panic. About time." On the far side of the ship, a young officer named Trilvan entered his quarters to find a tiny metal fox sitting on his bed. No note. Just the fox, folded from surveillance lens shielding. He looked around. Nothing. Then he remembered something she'd said, days ago, "When the stars go quiet, don't look up. Look within." The lights above him dimmed. Elsewhere, command was descending into chaos. The ship's navigation system had rerouted itself twice in the last hour. Internal doors refused to open unless someone said, "Pretty please." The weapon system began broadcasting polka music at intervals. And somehow, no one could locate Zelvoka's personal quarters. He slammed his fist on the interface table. "She is not magic. She is not omnipotent. Find the breach." A low-ranking comms officer spoke quietly. "Sir, she isn't breaching the system." "What do you mean?" "She is the system." Zelvok turned. "Explain." "She's not breaking through firewalls. She's embedding commands in normal behavior. Through the crew. Through conversation. Through humor. Jokes with code in them. She's taught us to bypass ourselves." Silence. Then a slow, rising dread settled across the command floor like a physical weight. Zelvok turned to the main screen. "She's conditioning us." The lights flickered. Somewhere, a hatch opened itself. Closed. Then opened again. And again. Rhythmically. Morse code, if anyone bothered to know it. Zelvok collapsed into his chair, heart pounding in his chest. "How long has this been going on?" The officer swallowed. "Since the second day. Maybe sooner." The comms panel lit up. Incoming message. From her. He let it play. May's voice, clear and calm, filled the air. "Hi, Zell. Thought you'd enjoy a bit of music. Something classic." An old Earth melody began. Slow, gentle. An acoustic guitar, soft chords. "I see trees of green. Red roses too." It played as doors opened randomly across the deck. Not in chaos. In sequence. As if following choreography. Crew members stared at the openings. Some stepped back. Others stepped forward. Entranced. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Zelvok slammed the console. Cut it. Nothing happened. May sat cross-legged in her cell, braiding wires into a loop. Empire ships approaching, came the voice of the tactical officer. How many? 7. All heavy class. Emperor's fleet. Zelvok stood. We'll hand her over. Let him deal with it. Sir, said the officer carefully, she hasn't asked to leave. That stopped him. What? She's not trying to escape. She's waiting. A pause. Zelvok closed his eyes. That was worse. On the flagship, orbiting now above the Vorthak's zenith, the Emperor's envoy opened a channel. You will deliver the human to us within the hour. Non-compliance will be considered mutiny. Zelvok replied, You don't want her. A beat. We will decide that, came the cold answer. Down in the cell, May had braided a necklace out of recycled wire and beads of hardened nutrient paste. She wore it now, gazing upward, humming. Almost curtain time, she whispered. The door hissed open. Not just her cell. All doors. Every door on the ship. Zelvok staggered back. Override. Override. Lockdown Protocol 9. The ship did not respond. Instead, the screens blinked. Words appeared. We tried kindness first. May stepped onto the corridor, barefoot, eyes calm. She passed a group of stunned guards and gave them a nod. Don't worry. I'm not here for vengeance. Just a message. She walked toward command. Every camera followed. Zelvok watched her approach, unable to stop it. He stood his ground, palm slick, pulse erratic. She entered the room. No weapons. Just that damned smile. Hi, Zel, she said brightly. Miss me? No one moved. She looked around, then up at the main viewer, where the Emperor's fleet hovered above. So, she said lightly, are you ready for the real show? Zelvok found his voice. What do you want? She stepped closer. I want you to remember this moment. The one where you realized you invited the storm aboard and asked it to sit politely. She reached into her waistband and pulled out a tiny device, an innocuous thing, metal and worn. What is that? He barked. She pressed the button. The ship didn't explode. The fleet didn't vanish. Instead, every data screen across all 7 ships lit up with Earth transmissions. Videos. Music. Speeches. War footage. Sports. Celebrations. Riots. Love letters. Prayers. Everything. Unfiltered. Uncensored. Humanity. Raw. Wild. Stunning. Terrifying. What is this? A voice crackled from the fleet. May looked up. It's not a threat, she said. It's a mirror. And we've shown it to 1,000 species already. The Emperor's envoy hesitated. You've been transmitting? For years. You didn't notice. You saw a monkey in a dress and missed the dagger behind the back. Zelvok collapsed into his chair. Why? He asked. May leaned in close, almost kind. Because sometimes the best way to defeat an empire is to make them fall in love with the thing they fear. She turned, walked out. The crew parted for her like she was gravity itself. Behind her, the alarms fell silent. And outside, the fleet didn't fire. They just watched. Watched the story unfold. Watched the humans smile. The Emperor's hologram appeared midair in the command chamber, 12 feet tall, sculpted in violet light, and wearing a crown forged of star metal and ego. His expression was carved from disdain. Zelvok dropped to one knee. The crew followed. All but one. May stood near the central console, arms loosely crossed, chin tilted. She stared up at the projection of the most powerful being in the known galaxy as if sizing up a neighborhood HOA president. Then she smiled. Majesty, she said, her voice bright as sunrise, you forgot to RSVP. The Emperor's voice cut like solar flares across ice. You will kneel. May's smile widened. Oh, I'm sorry. I must have missed the part where I signed up for feudal cosplay. Zelvok hissed low, half to her, half to himself. Do not provoke him. Why not? She said gently. I've already won. The Emperor's golden eyes narrowed. Explain. She took a breath, slow, deep, and the room seemed to inhale with her. I didn't come to escape, she said. I came to deliver something you didn't know you needed, a lesson you couldn't afford to ignore. She stepped forward, and the hologram flickered as if resisting her approach. But her voice remained steady. You think conquest is power, that fear is obedience. But fear doesn't last. It rots. It breeds rebellion. You control through intimidation, assumption, hierarchy. And those work until something smiles at you and keeps walking through the fire. The chamber was silent. Zelvok rose slowly. His voice was hoarse. You're saying Earth planned this? May's eyes met his. Every step. I volunteered. The Emperor's expression remained unreadable. For what purpose? She turned to face him again. To show you we're not afraid of you. To teach your fleet what humans look like when we're underestimated. The hologram flickered again. Static bled into the Emperor's form. We can annihilate your world in seconds. May nodded solemnly. You could. That's the truth. But you won't. She touched the console beside her. A soft tone rang out. Nothing aggressive, nothing explosive. Just a simple signal. A map projected in the air. Dozens of dots surrounding Imperial space, blinking in rhythmic unison. Not warships. Not fleets. Satellites. Probes. Listening. Transmitting. The projection zoomed in. Data lines ran through each, intercepted communications, encryption-cracked files, fleet schematics, psychological profiles. We've been listening, she said. Watching. Sending our story into every system you touched. Empires don't break because you outgun them. They break when people stop believing in their right to rule. The Emperor's gaze narrowed. You dare wage information war? May gave a single nod. We don't need to conquer you. We just need to let everyone else see what you are. Zelvoka's breath caught. You plan to destabilize the Empire from within. She raised a brow. What did you think Earth's greatest weapon was? Guns. She turned back to the Emperor. We weaponize culture. We export defiance disguised as charm. We wrap rebellion in sitcoms and bake freedom into every sarcastic quip. You abducted a smiling woman, and in return, we infected your entire chain of command with doubt. How many of your crew are laughing now? How many of your citizens are humming human songs, quoting Earth myths, wondering if maybe, just maybe, they don't have to kneel anymore? The Emperor stared, unmoved. May stepped closer. You ruled by silence. But we're very loud. The hologram distorted again. This time it wasn't interference. It was deliberate. The Emperor was fading. Or rather, the illusion of control was. One of the bridge officers turned to Zelvok. Sir, we're receiving unauthorized transmissions from within the Imperial capital. What kind? The officer swallowed. Videos. Earth broadcasts. On every frequency. The hologram snapped, then stabilized. The Emperor's voice thundered again. You have breached sacred space. You have poisoned minds. For this, Earth will burn. May's voice dropped an octave. No. And something in the tone made even the hologram pause. No, she said again, quieter, but heavier. You won't burn Earth. Because if you could, you already would've. She took a step forward. Her expression softened, no longer the charming guest, no longer the smiling saboteur. Now she looked like what she truly was. A tactician. A predator in pearls. You're afraid of us. The hologram glared. I fear no. You fear us because we were never supposed to matter. You fear us because we learn faster than you expected. Because we laugh when we're bleeding. Because we named our demons and made them dance. Because we fell in love with danger. And then taught it to fear us back. Silence stretched. Then she said it. You didn't abduct a human. You invited a virus into your own bloodstream. Behind her, the command screen flickered again. Images from planets across the galaxy, imperial colonies, vassal states, subject species, watching Earth's transmissions. Debating, questioning, singing, revolting. Some had already pulled down banners. One station showed a bonfire. Flags burning. The Emperor's image cracked. Zelvok stepped toward her, eyes hollow. You've undone centuries. May turned to him gently. We just gave your people permission to hope. And that, more than weapons, was what terrified the Empire. The hologram fractured. The Emperor's voice was jagged static. You are a plague. She nodded. And your immune system is outdated. The projection vanished. The chamber lights rose. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, one by one, officers stood straighter. Not in salute. In clarity. Zelvok was pale, shaking. What will happen now? May looked at him, not with scorn, but with something like mercy. That's up to you. You could destroy us. She shook her head. No. That's not our way. He swallowed. Then what is your way? She looked around the command chamber. We leave. We walk out. We tell the truth. And the galaxy will choose for itself. He stared. You think they'll side with you? She met his gaze. I think they already have. The ship's comms flared. A dozen captains speaking at once. Ships in orbit, Empire allies, colonies, asking for clarification. Demanding context. Zelvok looked at the chaos he could no longer command. He turned to her one last time. What should I say? She placed a hand on his shoulder. Tell them the human smiled, and left you intact. Then she turned, walked through the open blast doors, and made her way to the hangar. No alarms sounded. No guards chased her. The crew simply watched her go. Outside, a sleek shuttle waited. One of Earth's. Painted black, matte finish, marked with no insignia, just a symbol of a quill and flame. She boarded. Inside sat a man with steel-gray eyes and a cane propped beside him. He looked up from a notepad. Did you use the cookie gambit again? May dropped into the co-pilot seat and stretched. Worked like a charm. He grinned. Damn. Never gets old. The shuttle lifted. Behind them, the Vorthax Zenith floated in silence. A ship no longer sure of its orders. Earth Central is going to want a full report, the man said. May smiled. They'll get it. But maybe after I nap. I'm exhausted. Sabotage is such emotional labor. The man laughed. They broke orbit. And the galaxy was never the same again. 2 weeks later, in the far reaches of neutral space, a transmission broadcast on every available channel. It was short. May, seated at a wooden table. Earth trees behind her. A dog at her feet. A fire burning low beside her. She looked directly into the camera. Hello. We're from Earth. You may have heard some things. Some of them are true. Some are exaggerated. But one thing we want to make perfectly clear. She leaned in slightly. We didn't come looking for war. The flames crackled. But we're not afraid of it, either. She picked up a cookie. Took a bite. And if you're wondering what happens when you abduct an Earthling. She smiled, calm and disarming. You find out what fear really looks like. The video ended. The stars went quiet. But only for a moment. Then voices rose. Different species. Different languages. All repeating the same word. Earth. Not with dread. With awe. With curiosity. With fear. But most of all, with possibility. And from that moment on, the balance shifted. Not because of an invasion. Not because of a weapon. But because someone smiled.